Emma arrived at the small lakeside cabin hoping for nothing more than a quiet weekend to reset her mind. Life in Seattle had been heavy lately, pressure at work, long nights, and the constant feeling that she was losing pieces of herself. She needed silence, a breath of fresh air and distance from everything familiar. The last thing she expected was to run into someone from her past. But life often surprises us in strange ways. As she stepped out of her car, stretching her arms after the long drive, she noticed a figure standing on the porch of the cabin next door. At first, she thought he was just another guest visiting for the weekend. But when he turned his head, and the afternoon light hit his face, she froze. It was Liam. It felt unreal, almost like her mind was playing tricks on her. She hadn't seen him in years. They had once been close, the kind of close where one look could say everything. But time, career choices, and distance had separated them. Still, the memory of what they almost were had never fully faded. Liam stepped down from the porch with a slow, warm smile that made Emma's heart tighten in her chest. "I thought that was you," he said. His voice soft but full of surprise. Emma managed a breathless laugh. "Liam, what are you doing here?" He told her he was staying for a few days, taking a break from his hectic life in Chicago. They stood there awkwardly at first, both of them trying to understand how fate had placed them next to each other after so many years. But the awkwardness lasted only seconds. It melted the moment he walked closer, and the familiar look in his eyes returned, gentle, curious, and a little nostalgic. They ended up talking right there beside her car. What was meant to be a quick catch-up turned into a conversation that lasted hours. They talked about work, family, places they had traveled to, and how life felt more complicated than either of them expected. Emma noticed things about him she hadn't before, tiny details she somehow missed when they were younger. The way his voice softened when he talked about things he cared about. The way he listened without interrupting, as if her words mattered more than anything else happening around them. It felt strangely comforting. As the sun lowered behind the trees, painting the sky in warm gold, Emma realized they hadn't even moved to their cabins yet. She laughed and said, "We should probably go inside before it gets dark." But Liam said something that made her pause. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." The way he said it wasn't dramatic. It was honest. A quiet confession buried in simple words. They walked toward her cabin together. The air was crisp, and the soft breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh water. Something about the moment felt too perfect, too delicate, like saying the wrong thing could break whatever was forming between them again. Emma felt a pull. The same pull she used to feel years ago. The one she forced herself to ignore back then. Inside her cabin, everything felt warm and peaceful, almost like the place had been waiting for her. Liam leaned against the wooden doorway and asked if she wanted to join him for dinner at the small diner nearby. Emma hesitated for a heartbeat, not because she didn't want to go, but because she wasn't sure if she was ready for all the emotions resurfacing inside her. But then she saw the hopeful look in his eyes and knew she couldn't say no. Dinner felt easy. Their conversations flowed without effort, jumping from old memories to new dreams. It felt like time had folded, bringing them back to a place where they were younger, braver, and full of possibilities. But now they were older, carrying different scars, different lessons. And yet, the connection felt familiar and strangely stronger. After dinner, they walked back to the cabins. The night sky was clear, sprinkled with stars that reflected on the calm water. Emma felt the quiet between them growing heavier, but not uncomfortable, more like something was building, something neither of them had the courage to name. When they reached her cabin, Liam paused. There was a soft look in his eyes, a mixture of warmth and something deeper, something she remembered from long ago but never fully understood. "Emma," he said slowly, "did you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't drifted apart?" His question hit her like a sudden spark. She felt her heartbeat pick up, felt her thoughts tumble over each other as memories flashed through her mind. The college nights, the long talks, the times she caught him looking at her with something more than friendship. But she didn't know how to answer. She wasn't even sure what she felt at that moment. All she knew was that the question stayed in the air, heavy and electric, waiting. Emma opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. And maybe that was answer enough for now. Liam didn't push. He simply gave her a soft smile, the kind that carried more meaning than words. "Good night, Emma." "Good night," she whispered back. As he walked away into the calm night, she realized something deep inside her had shifted. She didn't know what the weekend would bring. She didn't even know if she wanted to know. But she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope mixed with fear, longing mixed with curiosity, and a quiet warmth that whispered, "This is just the beginning." Emma woke early the next morning, unsure if last night's moment with Liam had been real or just her tired mind playing tricks on her. The quiet lake shimmered in the soft morning light, and the cold air brushed against her skin as she stepped onto the porch. She wrapped her sweater around herself, breathing in the peaceful morning. Then she heard a gentle knock. She opened the door to find Liam standing there with 2 cups of coffee, his hair a little messy, his smile warm and slightly shy. "I remembered how you like it," he said. The simple gesture hit her harder than she expected. People rarely remembered small details about her, but he always had. She thanked him and stepped outside with him. The cool breeze mixing with the comforting smell of coffee. They decided to walk along the lakeside trailer path covered with golden leaves, tall trees, and the faint sound of the water touching the shore. The day felt bright and peaceful, but beneath that peace was something else. Something neither of them wanted to admit yet. They walked side by side, talking about normal things: jobs, cities, friends, the strange pressure of adulthood. But every now and then, their conversations slid into more personal places. Things like loneliness, old memories, and the surprising weight of choices they made in the past. Emma felt comfortable with him, almost too comfortable. He made her forget about the stress she carried, even the worries she tried to hide. It should have scared her, but it didn't. Instead, it made her wonder why she ever let him slip away in the first place. At one point, they reached a quiet spot by the water where tall pines stood like silent guards. The lake looked like a sheet of glass. Emma stopped walking, staring at her reflection rippling in the water. For a moment, she debated whether she should say what had been sitting heavy in her chest. But something inside her pushed the words forward. "Liam," she said, voice soft, "do you ever regret not telling me how you felt back then?" He froze, not dramatically, but enough for her to notice the shift in him. His eyes stayed on the water, as if he needed a moment to steady himself. The silence stretched between them, full of tension but also understanding. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't tell you," he said carefully, "because I was scared you didn't feel the same." Emma's breath caught. She looked at him, watching the way his shoulders lowered slightly, like he had been holding that truth in for years. She whispered, "And what about now?" This time he looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes held a mix of warmth, sadness, and something she had hoped to see again someday. Something she once believed she imagined. But before he could speak, a sharp gust of wind swept across the lake, shaking the branches above them. A few leaves flew between them, breaking the moment. Liam blinked, as if pulled out of whatever he was about to say. He cleared his throat gently. "We should head back. It might rain later." Emma nodded, though she felt a pang of frustration inside. She wanted an answer. She needed one. But she also understood that some truths are not easy to say. especially when they come with years of history attached to them. As they walked back, the silence was different, not awkward, but thick with emotion. Every step felt like walking through memories and possibilities. Emma wondered if she should push him to finish his thought, but something in his expression made her hold back. It was too soon. Too tender. Back near the cabins, they sat on a wooden bench facing the lake. The clouds had grown heavier, turning the sky a muted grey. Liam leaned back, taking in the scenery. "Do you ever think," he said quietly, "that maybe life took us in different directions for a reason?" She turned to him. "What reason?" He shrugged lightly. "Maybe we weren't ready back then. Maybe we had to grow first." His words made sense, yet they hurt a little. She wondered if he truly believed that, or if he was just trying to protect both of them from everything hidden beneath the surface. Emma decided not to respond. Sometimes silence speaks louder. The wind grew colder, and Liam offered her his scarf. She laughed at first, saying she didn't need it, but he insisted gently. The small act warmed her more than the scarf did. She realized she missed being cared for in such a simple, genuine way. Inside her cabin, Emma gathered her things. She moved quickly, trying to stay focused, but her mind kept drifting back to the night before, the closeness, the confession, the way Liam had looked at her like she was someone he had been searching for all these years. When she stepped outside with her bag, Liam was already waiting near her car. He looked calm, but she could see the sadness in his eyes. The kind that comes when you want more time, but know you can't have it. He took a step toward her. "Emma, this doesn't have to be the end." Her throat tightened. "I know." He hesitated, then added softly, "If life gives us another chance, I won't run this time." She felt tears sting her eyes, not because she was heartbroken, but because she felt hope, gentle, fragile hope that maybe their story wasn't finished yet. Emma placed her hand on his arm, just for a moment. "Take care of yourself, Liam." "You too," he whispered. She got into her car, her heart pounding with emotions she couldn't name. As she drove down the narrow road leading away from the cabins, she looked into the rear-view mirror one last time. Liam was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. He didn't wave. He didn't walk away. He just stayed there, as if holding on to the image of her for as long as he could. And in that moment, Emma knew she would remember this weekend forever, not because it ended perfectly, but because it awakened something inside her, a part of her that had been asleep for too long. The time they spent together had been short, unfinished, full of questions and emotions they barely had time to understand. But it had been real. It had been warm. It had been unforgettable. As the road curved and he disappeared from view, she let out a slow, trembling breath. Some goodbyes hurt. Some goodbyes heal. And some goodbyes don't feel like goodbyes at all. This one felt like the beginning of something neither of them could explain, but both of them felt it. Something was still there, and maybe, just maybe, life would bring them back to each other again. As the afternoon passed, the air became thick with the promise of rain. They returned to their cabins, planning to meet again later for dinner. Emma entered her room with her heart beating too fast. She leaned against the door, realizing she hadn't felt this alive, this unsure, or this hopeful in years. The moment she closed her eyes, all she could think about was the question she had asked, and the answer Liam never finished. It stayed with her like a whisper. And what about now? Later that evening, as she prepared to meet him again, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked calmer, warmer, more like the version of herself she used to be, before life got too heavy and before time created a distance she thought would never close. But now Liam was here, and the feelings she had buried so deeply were rising back to the surface, faster than she expected, stronger than she wanted to admit. As she stepped outside and saw him waiting for her, she knew something important had begun, something she wasn't ready to name yet, but something she could feel in every part of her. Something that had been silent for years, but was ready to be heard again. The storm arrived earlier than anyone expected. By evening, dark clouds gathered over the lake, making the peaceful cabin surrounded by trees feel smaller, quieter, and strangely intimate. Emma stood by her window watching the sky turn a deep shade of grey. She could hear the distant rumble of thunder rolling across the mountains, like a slow warning that the night would bring more than rain. A soft knock came at her door when she opened it. Liam was standing there with a blanket draped over his arm, and a gentle smile that somehow warmed the cold air around him. "Power might go out tonight," he said. "Want some company until then?" Emma didn't have to think. She stepped back and let him in. They settled in front of the fireplace, wrapped in the same blanket Liam had brought. The fire crackled softly, glowing orange and gold, casting shadows that danced on the wooden walls. The atmosphere felt cozy, but also charged with something deeper, something neither of them dared name yet. They started talking about small things, at first funny stories from college, the people they lost touch with, embarrassing moments they thought they had forgotten. They laughed more than they had in years, the kind of laugh that loosens all the knots inside you. But laughter always has a way of opening doors to heavier truths. Liam's voice softened after a while. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if we'd been honest with each other back then?" Emma felt her chest tighten. She looked at him, noticing how the firelight reflected in his eyes, how tired he suddenly looked beneath the surface. "Sometimes," she admitted. "More than I want to." He let out a slow breath. "Me too." A long silence followed, soft but heavy. The storm outside grew louder. Rain tapped hard against the windows, the wind pushing against the cabin like a restless spirit trying to get in. Liam moved a little closer, not enough to cross any line, but enough for Emma to feel the warmth of him, enough to make her heart race in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Emma," he said quietly, "there's something I never said. Something I should have said a long time ago." She looked up at him, her breath catching. "What is it?" He stared into the fire, almost afraid to face her. "I left for Chicago because I needed a fresh start. I told everyone it was for work. But the truth is, I left because caring about you scared me. I didn't know what to do with those feelings. And I was afraid you'd never feel the same." Emma's heart dropped and rose at the same time. For years she thought she had imagined the connection between them. Hearing it now in his voice felt unreal. She whispered, "You should have told me." "I know," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I thought I was doing the right thing. But all I did was lose time. Time I wish I had back." The storm outside crackled, the sound sharp enough to make her jump. Liam reached out instinctively, his hand brushing her arm light, gentle, full of concern. The touch lasted only a second, but it carried more meaning than words ever could. They sat quietly, two hearts speaking in silence. Emma wanted to tell him everything, how she felt years ago, how she felt now, how his presence made her feel both safe and lost at the same time. But she hesitated. Their timing had always been complicated, and she didn't want to break the fragile moment with words she wasn't ready to say. Liam leaned back against the couch, staring at the fire. "My life in Chicago looks good from the outside," he said softly. "Good job. Good apartment. Everything looks stable. But inside it feels empty. I think I've been running for too long." Emma looked at him closely. She saw a man who carried unspoken loneliness behind his steady voice. A man who wanted peace but didn't know where to find it. She felt the truth of his words deep inside herself. Maybe they were both searching for something they lost years ago. Before she could reply, the lights flickered. They blinked once, twice. Then everything went dark. The cabin fell silent except for the storm and the soft crackling of the fireplace. The dim glow created an atmosphere that felt almost unreal, like time had slowed, like the night was holding its breath. Emma whispered, "Looks like we lost power." Liam chuckled gently. "Guess we'll have to survive by firelight." The glow made everything feel softer, more intimate. Emma could feel her heartbeat in her throat. She wondered if he felt the same closeness, the same quiet pull. He turned toward her, his eyes gentler than she had ever seen them. "I'm glad you're here tonight," he said quietly. "I don't think I realized how much I missed this." Missed. U.S. The word sent a warm ache through her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but the storm thundered loudly, shaking the windows. The sudden noise startled her, and she leaned slightly toward him without thinking. Liam, steady and calm, rested a reassuring hand near her, not touching her fully, but offering quiet comfort in that moment. Surrounded by firelight and rain, with emotions rising between them like a tide, Emma realized something important. Whatever happened next, this night would stay with her forever. A night of truth, a night of closeness, a night where old feelings finally stepped into the light. And yet, neither of them knew what the morning would bring. Morning came slowly, as if the sky itself didn't want to interrupt the quiet stillness inside Emma's cabin. The storm had passed, leaving behind a soft grey sky and a thin layer of mist floating over the lake. Emma woke to the smell of wet earth and the faint warmth of the fire that had burned through the night. For a moment she stayed still, remembering the long conversation, the confessions, and the closeness she shared with Liam as the storm outside raged. But morning meant reality. Morning meant questions. And morning meant choices they were both avoiding. She stepped outside onto the porch, hugging her sweater close as the cold air brushed against her skin. The lake was calm again, reflecting the muted sky. She spotted Liam standing near the water, hands in his pockets, staring out as if searching for something he couldn't name. Emma walked down to him, her steps soft on the damp ground. He heard her and turned, offering a quiet smile, gentle, warm, and tired. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. There was no awkwardness between them, only a quiet heaviness. They both knew their time here was running out. Emma had to drive back to Seattle. Liam had a flight to Chicago that evening. Their worlds were still far apart, and the weekend hadn't magically erased the responsibilities waiting for them. Yet neither wanted to pretend the night before meant nothing. They stood side by side, watching small ripples move across the water. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said yet. After a long moment, Liam spoke. "Emma, about last night." Her heart tightened, but she kept her eyes on the lake. "I know," she whispered. "No," he said gently, turning toward her. "I don't want to leave anything unclear."